One of the successes that has blown me away that I have, as I pour through data, and most of you know I'm a physics and math and astronomy guy, so I love the data and spend a little bit of time with it, is what's happened with our 4-year graduation rate, and in particular relative to our 6-year graduation rate. This slide shows you our 4-year graduation rate from 1997 through 2013. Over those years, 16 years, our 4-year graduation rate has increased from 29% to 43%, 14 percentage points in 16 years. That is amazing. I know no other university that's had that kind of success in moving the needle on 4-year graduation rate without changing their entrance requirements. We're admitting the same students now that we did then, but we're getting them through much, much more effectively. The other thing to notice is that our 6-year graduation rate really hasn't changed much. It's fluctuated, but it hasn't trended up or down. What this means is that over this period, the same number of students get through, but a higher percentage of them finish in 4 years instead of 5 or 6. That's saving those students and the people of Iowa a great deal of money. It means we've become much more efficient. It's hurt our enrollment. But I'll take that, okay? To get these students through more quickly, more efficiently, to the same degree, to the same level of quality, but in a shorter period of time, is an amazing success. And that's on the hands of every faculty and staff member here. That doesn't happen by administrative fiat or someone waking up and saying, let's change that. It happens by people making a commitment to the success of our students and making a difference in their everyday lives and helping them understand how much it would mean to finish in 4 years instead of 5 to their bank account. Okay? So congratulations. This is a big, big step and something we as a university should be extremely proud of and continue to work that number up until it crosses 50%. And to start to see if we can climb that 6-year graduation rate, all right? See if we can get it up a little too. This past year, we've had a pretty successful year, many would say an extremely successful year in cultivating additional resources for the university. In the legislative session this year, we were able to get the full request of $95 million. It's an increase of $2 million over what we had last year. A lot of that is due to the hard work of many people, some of which are in this room. Mary Brown helped us out a great deal as our legislative liaison, sitting over there. Andrew was also very engaged in this and putting materials together. And our student body was incredibly active this year in getting down to the legislature and lobbying various legislators on this. I don't think a week went by that we didn't have at least 5 students down there for a day in their purple polos, going off and visiting with their specific legislator as well as legislative leaders who would be involved in the decision, and when important votes were being taken in either the House or the Senate, setting up in the gallery, in the balcony, in the front row, leaning out over the balcony so they can see all those purple shirts. It was amazing to see the work that our students did in helping with this effort. We spent a lot of time last summer meeting with legislators across this state, working on this particular project and to try to get those state resources here. So we have $95 million in state appropriation this year. We did not see a rescission, which was handed to the other 2 institutions in the state, and then we saw an addition to our budget. So we were up a true $2 million over the last year. We also had a private fundraising increase by $3.8 million, as you can see, and this year topped $22.8 million. Some of those are pledges, some of those are actual gifts, cash in hand, but it is an increase from a little over $19 million the year before. We've also seen our Panther Scholarship Club raised a record of $1.5 million. In the past, we'd been a little over $1 million, but we weren't really close to 1.5 in the past. So this is remarkable work that Nathan in particular did. Nathan Christensen led the push to get us to 1.5. We also had a record number of donors to that program. And then finally, our Schindler Education Building was named, received LEED Gold status this year. And it received LEED Gold status for the way it was designed, but that design has saved the university $180,000+ in annual energy costs because of what we put in that building, a 55% reduction in the energy cost in that building. So great things happen when you really start to step back and think, what can we do to help us save some energy? All this says that we have in place a different set of resources than we had the previous year. When we look at our state funding and we look at the savings that we have and we look at the private funds that we have available as well. As we think about all of those successes, it's important, though, for us to turn and think about what happens next. What do we need to be doing now so that we remain a high-quality education? We keep moving forward. Where are we going to be 7 years from now when we reach our sesquicentennial? And what do we need to do to make sure that during those 8 years, we have laid the foundation for the 40 years that follow? And not simply take care of business today. Higher education is changing. Higher education is changing rapidly, and we need to think about where do we need to be 30 years from now. And we need to take those steps now and lay that foundation so that in 30 years, this institution is as healthy, as viable, and as successful as we see we are at the moment. So let's look at a few things. First of all, I want to talk just a little bit about budget. What I found on this campus is we spend a lot of time talking about our general education fund, which this year is about $179 million, $180 million in the current budget. But our total budget is $354 million. That general education fund represents only about half of our budget, 51%. Much of the rest of it is in auxiliaries, student residence, all sorts of things. Auxiliaries include Mocker and the Gallagher Blue Dorn, things of that sort. Okay? It's in sponsored programs. It's in athletics. This is the revenue that's raised by each of these organizations, not including their revenue from the general education fund. Okay? Some of them get some sources from that. Okay? It's a big budget. I want you to look at this a little bit, though. Everything except the yellow, the blue, and the green are impacted by enrollment. At some points, the yellow, the blue, and the green, athletics, special appropriations, and grants and sponsored program, might be impacted by enrollment, but the revenue they're bringing in are largely not impacted by enrollment. But that means most of our budget, over 90% of it in one way or another, is directly affected by the number of students we have on campus. And we need to talk about our enrollment. So this is our enrollment history going back to 1967. I don't really know why I asked to go back that far. Maybe it's because that's, 50 years, and that's younger than I am, but go back 50 years and see what it's done. We've had several changes over that period of time on our campus. We've had some new buildings. We've certainly grown. We've had some program changes. We've changed some things in athletics. We've changed some things in music. We didn't have the Gallagher Blue Dorn. We didn't have the Dome. We didn't have the Curris Business Building. Lots of things. And you can see that we've been up and down a little bit. We peaked in 2001, and then we came down rather sharply down to 2006, started to rise a little bit, hit 2011, sort of peaked there at 13,168, and then we had sort of a sharp decline, and we've been declining ever since then, and we are expecting to be down again this year. We won't know the number until the 10th class day, which is the Friday before Labor Day, so we won't really have that number out for a couple of weeks, sometime after Labor Day. But we'll get that out. We know it's probably going to be down some. But what I see is that from 2011, we haven't had a positive enrollment trend. We've had a negative enrollment trend. And there are, I think, a lot of reasons for that. I think many of us know that there were certain circumstances and events on campus in the 2011, 10, 11, 11, and 12 years that did impact our enrollment. But there were several other things that happened at that same time. One of those were, several national events. We were starting to talk much more about that time about the value of higher education, in particular the four-year degree. A lot of that conversation came up because the cost of education was rising very rapidly, and student debt was rising very rapidly. In fact, it was at this time, just before this time, that we as a university decided we needed to do something about student debt. But what we were doing wasn't changing the national conversation. And the national conversation about the value of higher education started to change as student debt got high and as the cost started to climb faster than the cost of living. We also had several things happen at that time within our state. We started to talk about things like performance-based funding. which really wasn't performance-based funding. It was funding for depending on the number of students that you had from Iowa. And several of our competitors in this state got very, very aggressive at recruiting Iowa students. And it had an impact on us. And they put scholarship dollars behind it that we weren't able to match. And it has impacted our enrollment. Okay? The other thing that's happened since then is our economy has gotten good. It's gotten very hot. The one thing that you can see in our data in several different places that is our enrollment declines. The thing that's going on at the same time is the unemployment rate's falling. When the unemployment rate goes below 3%, institutions like us, in particular, have a negative impact on their enrollment. Because many of our students aren't really decided that they want to get a degree. They know they want to go to college, but someone offers them a pretty good job, what seems to be a pretty good job to an 18-year-old at $12 or $15 an hour. And they're still living at home and they take it. And they postpone their education. They may be back, but they're more likely to be in one of the trade schools or one of the community colleges first before they come back. All of those have impacted our enrollment in one form or another. But for all of us that are in higher education, and especially those of us that are in comprehensive universities, we've faced several headwinds. This national conversation regarding the value of higher education that I've already talked about is one of those. This in-state and out-of-state competition. We're all trying to grow, and the pool of students coming out of high schools is shrinking. That's the demographics of traditional college students. It has shrunk greatly since my generation, the baby boom, went through. It's continued to move down. But we've all been trying to grow, and most of the large publics have been pretty successful at that. Much of that has been at the cost of especially the comprehensive universities, Demographics are changing. I want to talk about that in a little bit. And as I mentioned, this strong economy, the low unemployment rate impacts us. What that means, the conclusion, we've got an extremely competitive market. An extremely competitive market for recruiting students. We have to be on our game. And we have to rethink how we're doing that as an institution. Since 2011 to today, we've continued to drop. We need to think about what we're doing. If we continue to do things the way we are, we won't change that. We need to rethink that. And we've started to do a lot of that. So let's look at some of these demographics. Here's the number of students coming out of Iowa's high schools from 1998 through 2032. Right? So those 2032 students, I think, are like kindergartners right now. They're the last ones we can really get a good handle on. So everything in the purple is known. Everything in the gold we're dreaming about. And right now, you can see that between now and 2025, we'll see about 2,400 more students coming out of our Iowa high schools. All right, that's a 6% gain. A 6% gain, if we were to grow our enrollment by 6%, we'd be a little over 12,000. That isn't where we'd like to be. We need to be bigger than that. Okay? We need to grow by about 500 students per year in our freshman class, an enrollment of 400 total. If we can grow our freshman class, transfer students by about 500 a year, we can get to our goal that you see down at the bottom that's scaring and freaking out a lot of people right now, at 13.5 by 2023. That's a big number. It's a big lift. You'll see it in a little bit. Okay? It's not enough, though, to continue to take the market share that we're currently taking. We've got to increase our market share of Iowa students. We've got to be smarter. We've got to be better. And this has to be something that all of us at this university take on. And we'll address what that might mean here in a little bit. The other thing that's happening in these demographics that's really important for all of us to pay attention to is that the students who are graduating from high school are changing drastically. This shows the percentage of students who are white that are graduating and the percentage of students who are minorities. Look at the bottom one in particular. Currently, 16% of the students graduating from Iowa high schools are non-white, minority-represented students. By 2032, it will be 22%. If you were to extrapolate this out, just follow these since they look like straight lines, the lines will cross. We'll be 50% minority. We'll be majority minority in 2087. But this won't be linear. The minority population is going to tail up. It will happen much sooner than that. But it isn't possible to predict when yet. We need to pay attention to how we recruit and how we serve minority students on this campus, because they will become a much more important part of our student body and the students that Iowa needs us to educate as we move forward. It is our responsibility to make sure all students have an equitable opportunity to get the education they need and are treated equitably and have equitable support systems while they're here. If we don't, our enrollment is going to continue to be a problem. And we won't be serving the people of Iowa the way we need to. One of the other things that I talked about is that we're in an extremely difficult market, competitive market at the moment. We need to think about our price point. Is our tuition right? Relative to our competitors. One of the things that I looked at was to take our board-approved peer group. That's the ones you see up here. Now, before you look up there and say, oh, those are their tuitions, no, all right? No one's charging negative tuitions, all right? Not public institutions. There might be some private ones. But what this is the difference between the Research 1 universities in their state and their tuition. And so what this says is that for the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, their tuition is $2,216 less than UMass Amherst. Okay? Did that for every one of those institutions in our peer group. What you see, if you come down to the bottom, on average, we're average $2,400 below their R1s. The median is about $2,600, $2,650. Okay? We're $114 on average below ours. In reality, we're about $200 above Iowa State and about $300 below Iowa. And that's creating some problems with us in recruiting. And so we're working with the Board of Regents and others to find ways to get our tuition and fees something closer to this. So we're more competitive in recruiting and encouraging students to come here. This past year, the first step was taken on that when the Regents chose to raise Iowa State and Iowa's tuition by 3.8% while only raising ours by 2.8%. It got us $80. If we keep at that pace, we will get to $2,500 in 27 years. We need to speed that up just a little bit if this is our goal, okay? And it is our goal to get something like at least a $2,500 separation. That will help us a lot with what we need to do. Iowa and Iowa State both want to increase their tuition, and they have great reasons to do that relative to their competitors, relative to their peers. So there is an opportunity, and we're working with people both in the legislature as well as the regents to find ways to make sure that our price point, our tuition and fees, is appropriate, not just relative to Iowa and Iowa State's, but other competitors that we have. So it's very important that we look at our price point. So enrollment principles and goals. What are we doing to address this? Have we done anything? Yes. First of all, what are our principles? First, ensure quality. We can't back up on quality. We can't just let people in because we need students. That puts pressure on our classrooms. It puts pressure on us. We've got to make sure that we ensure quality of what we're offering and of the student body. We're not going to back up on that. We also want to maintain our commitment to Iowa. We're not going to just go out and look for non-resident students. Though they help our budget, we have a commitment to the state of Iowa in terms of educating the students that grew up here and making sure those students go back to work here. We are the institution that educates Iowans for Iowa. 90% of our students come from Iowa, and 80-some%, we're not sure, it changes a little bit, somewhere around 85% of those Iowa kids, when they graduate, go back to work in Iowa. But 50% of those students that come to us from out of state that graduate go to work in the state of Iowa. We are building Iowa's workforce. And that's extremely important because right now there are more job openings in this state than there are unemployed people. Think about that. More job openings than unemployed people. Forget about their skill sets. If they all filled a job, we'd still have job openings. That's not a good situation for a state to be in. We happen to be a good recruiter for people into this state as an institution. We're also important because of what we do for the quality of life here in the Valley in getting people to say we want to come to Iowa and in particular to Cedar Falls and Waterloo. We're going to increase the number of Iowa students who transfer. We've created a community college outreach program that's being led by Kristen Mosier and Kristen Woods to reach out to the community colleges, make sure we have better articulation agreements, make sure we're getting faculty at the community colleges in here to talk to each other so we create a better relationship. We know that if the relationships are good, we're much more likely to get students to transfer here. The community college presidents a year ago this past spring met on this campus and were clear in their message to me and the leadership that met with them. They believe that UNI is the best choice for most of their students as a transfer institution because they're coming from institutions with small class sizes and faculty and courses taught by faculty. And they see that here in a way they don't see anywhere else. And they'd love to have their students come here. But it means that we need to work on those linkages and make sure those students and those faculty know what we're doing and that the transition and the transfer will go well for those students. And again, focusing on the success of our students and not just focusing on students, right? But their success. So we also want to grow our non-resident undergraduate enrollment, and I've said that again, two pieces. Most people, when I say that, say, oh, yeah, you need the money for the budget. No, that isn't the reason I want them. It helps. But the real reason is Iowa needs those people in this state. We have this problem with our workforce that we can be a solution to. If we will recruit students from out of state, we know that at least half of them will stay in-state when they take their jobs. And that's important to Iowa. So we've set the goal of reaching by 2023 13,500 students. It's important that we get to that level. As our enrollment declines, a bigger and bigger part of our budget is put into handling funds and finances, expenses that are fixed, keeping buildings running and operating, keeping them looking nice. If we can get, those expenses don't change. As we increase enrollment, we have a larger and larger percentage of our budget for faculty and staff salaries, faculty and staff positions, for supplies, for interesting equipment that really intrigues the students and provides research and scholarly opportunities for our faculty and staff. It's important that we work our enrollment to 13.5, certainly as soon as possible. We have the facilities for that. We probably have the facilities for 14,000. Let's work towards 13.5. It's going to take all of us. One of the questions that I'm often asked, in fact, I've talked to several people about this, several groups. One of the questions that has come up in every one of those groups, how can I help? What can I do? The one thing that I don't need you to do is be admissions counselors, right? And that's the fear, is that you're going to ask me to go out on the road and recruit students. And no. The best thing you can do is to really make sure that you're committed to the success of our students. If they get a great education, if they feel like they are cared for and their success is what's important, then they will tell friends and neighbors back home, and it will be easier to get other students from those communities and regions of our state. But one of the things we know is that we have no problem recruiting students who have visited our campus. So as faculty and staff, if there are ways that you can see to bring students to our campus, whether it's a camp, whether it's a one-day program, think about ways that you can engage student groups to get prospective students, 8th graders, 9th graders, high school kids, to the campus for a meaningful event. It might be a camp, might be a one-day program, it might be a science discovery show. It might be a trip to the Gallagher Blue Dorn. It might be lots of things, but getting them on campus and making sure we have an interaction with them. We have put in place several different things that will help us reach these goals and take this problem on. One, we have prospective minority student engagement through UNIQ. This year, we started this in the spring. We started bringing groups of minority students from different schools onto campus for an engagement, spending almost all day here, working with their guidance counselors to get them up here. It's been remarkable. We've had some of those students apply already. We started in the spring. It was really kind of late. We expect this next year as the year we'll really see something come from that. We already have more than 2,100 students scheduled to be on this campus, part of this program. They're sophomores, they're juniors, and they're seniors. They're all minority students. Robert Smith and Jonathan Cox have been very active in putting this together with their colleagues in UNIQ. We also have the Community College Outreach Program that I talked about a little bit ago that Kristen Mosier and Kristen Woods are working on, developing our outreach program. We're implementing this constituent relationship management software, or CRM. I know this is a software program that many people kind of raise an eyebrow about. It's a tool, and it's nothing more than a tool. And it's no better than our application of that tool. But it has the opportunity and the possibility and the capability to make a huge difference on this campus, because it will allow us not only to track our interaction with students, but to put in place interactions that intensify our connection and contact with those students from the time we first engage them, whether they're freshmen or sophomores or juniors or seniors. The CRM had sort of a soft go live, soft launch, June 7th of this year. It's already active. We're already putting out information, we call them journeys, to students that we have in this database. Before, as students came in, oftentimes if they came in for a camp or a program, someone had a spreadsheet with their contact information in it. If admissions wanted to see them, they may not even know that they were on campus, but they might be able to get the spreadsheet. But then they had to move that material over, and they didn't necessarily have all the information they need. Much of this information was on several different spreadsheets in several different departments instead of one location. This will help all of us connect with potential students, current students, and students once they become alumni, and those students who have stepped out or dropped out at some point. We have more modules to add to this and to bring up and to actually make work. But those universities that are growing the fastest right now in our state implemented a CRM in a constructive way and got people to understand what they needed to do to interact with it to make a difference in recruiting the next class. So it's important that we not just put this up, but that we realize it's an important tool that we all need to engage with. We all will be working with and understanding and making sure when we have prospective students on campus that we're getting that information into the CRM. You will be hearing more about it this year in particular as it's rolled out and how you can engage with it and the difference that you can make. One of the things that we really need to work on is marketing and branding, and we've done two things here, a marketing and reputation team, marketing and branding team, and then moving towards integrated communications and marketing. We sent a group of 8 people this past spring to Denver, Colorado, to a CASE workshop on marketing and branding in higher education and marketing and branding for enrollment. They've come back. The request was that they would be able to put together for us a marketing and branding program moving forward. We don't have that in place yet. They're still working on it. But with the new director, we're making some really great strides in putting that together. We're also moving to an integrated marketing and communications format. Instead of working with just projects coming in and things going out, trying to integrate all of our messaging, from admissions to our public relations, to our branding, to our marketing, getting them all aligned so that we're telling a consistent story and we're telling a story that follows a storyline instead of being a series of things that come out at random times of the year. A real step forward, I think. We're also enhancing our out-of-state efforts, especially in Minnesota and Illinois, to recruit in those areas. We've put together some commercials for the state of Minnesota where we use alums that are in that state to tell their story, their UNI story. One of those is Kip Elliott, the CFO of the Twins, put together a remarkable commercial about what his time at UNI meant and how it prepared him for the future that he has. Another is the CFO of Summit Brewing, a young woman who came here and has had a remarkable career as well. We're also working, as I mentioned a little earlier, on getting our tuition and net price at the right place. I can't emphasize enough how important our enrollment is. It amounts to nearly 50% of our general fund budget. It does make a difference in what we're able to do in meeting the needs of our students. We do a remarkable job, but it will be easier to manage that budget if we can get our enrollment up around over 12, around 13, 13.5. It makes it much easier to hire faculty, makes it much easier to look at compensation packages, complete compensation packages, and make sure they're as competitive as they can possibly be so that we're recruiting the best faculty for this university. So it is something that we all need to pay attention to because it impacts all of us as we look at our future and where we're going. So a couple of other things that we need to do this year, some big projects, heavy lifts that we've got going on. Just a list of them here are HLC accreditation. We've got a reaffirmation coming up in 2 years, revising our general education curriculum, working with our strategic plan, and then looking at a future-oriented vision. And let's look at each of these rather quickly. I know I'm running a little longer than I wanted to, but first of all, HLC planning. This is perhaps as important an item as we have on the list. We need to be accredited. We have never really had a big issue with accreditation. We have been told, though, that our general education program is not as accessible as they would like to see. And we're currently in the process of putting together the documents. We're in year 8 of a 10-year process. These next 2 years, this year and next year, are important in preparing those documents, reviewing those documents, and getting them submitted to the HLC. And then in 2021, we will have our visit. We have the team put together. They're working through the development of these documents. They'll be working across the campus to pull these together. Scott Peters and Christian Mosier are leading this effort, the co-chairs for our HLC team, pulling together the documents, pulling together the information, putting together the report. As we pull that together, we'll better understand some of the things that we need to be doing and concentrating on. We'll have the site visit and kind of go from there as we receive our accreditation from HLC. This is always a big lift for a campus, the final 2 years of an HLC process. We're in those 2 years. It's going to take a lot of time and effort, but it's important work for us, and it helps us see where we're at and some of the things that we need to work on. The general education revision has been a faculty-driven process from the beginning, and last year there were several items associated with that moved through Faculty Senate and were approved. We're way down the road on that. There's a lot of work left to be done to get that program up, and the key point is not just to change it, but to make sure that we create a general education program, first and foremost, that serves the needs of our students. Again, that means making sure that they get the education they need to be successful when they leave. But that program must be accessible. We must be accountable to students and to others and be able to say, this program actually does the things that we claim it does. And HLC has told us a couple of times that our current program isn't accessible. It could be high quality, but we can't really show that in the assessment mechanisms that we have. We have this past year built a stronger shared governance system, or at least been trying to. As the Chapter 20 changes occurred, there were some things that we needed to do and to put in place because we would no longer be bargaining things like benefits. And so last year, kind of at the end of the year, we created 3 advisory groups, one on budget, which has members from across the community, across the campus, one on non-retirement benefits, and then one on retirement benefits, specifically to talk about and to share information and ideas about each of these so that good decisions about our benefits and about our budget can be made. We've also created a faculty handbook committee. This is a little bit older. It started about February of 2017, almost immediately when I got here. That's about the time we knew we were going to need something like that because what was the CBA and all the things that were in a collective bargaining agreement weren't going to be in there. We needed to get that into a faculty handbook. And yeoman's work has been done on this to get the first faculty handbook put together and then to put a committee in place to continue to update it and look at what needs to be done going forward. So we have tried to strengthen the communication between administration in a shared governance way as some of these changes have come about. We have continued to advance our strategic plan. We put together a strategic planning action committee that Randy Pilkington led, and out of that created not only the metrics, but some of the outcomes, the targets, goals of those metrics. That has been vetted around campus. Those have been rolled out, and we're creating a website that will be public, not just for the UNI community, but for the community at large, so people can see how we're doing on those. The civic action plan has been put together. Julianne Gassman in particular has had a leadership role in this and creating a plan that is about providing not just students but faculty and staff, co-curricular activities, ways to engage outside of the campus and are simply in our classes. The sorts of things that you saw Skylar involved in, and so many of those students that we talked about as we opened the program. We have started to create a vision for the university. We have a vision statement, but it doesn't say it says what we do and what our goals are, but it doesn't say what our university needs to look like. What are the programs? What are the things we need to be working on? How do we need to be organized? Not for now, but for our future, because higher education is changing. John Gardner made this statement at a symposium I was at. The colleges and universities were designed for students who don't now predominate. It wasn't designed for our current students. It wasn't designed for many of our current faculty and staff. What does that mean? Where's our state going? Where's the economy going? Where's the culture, the quality of life going? What are the things we need to be doing so that we make sure the students of tomorrow have the education they need when they get here? What's that look like? Are we ready for that? Where are we going? Okay. With that, we did put together a year ago, we had a strategic visioning session with leadership. We have started to roll some of that out and talk about those. We will be meeting with faculty groups this year and also meeting with community groups about what that vision might look like. Where are things going? This isn't done. It's something we need to take on. Where are we going as a campus? No one has an answer to that yet. It's something we need to work on together. In closing, we've got some events coming up I want to mention. University Council meeting in, I think that's like 3 weeks. We've got the fall faculty meeting. Barb and friends, I think, are up for that on the 17th, right here again, 3:30. And then the Iowa Board of Regents, normally the regents meet here in October. That meeting has been moved to November. Turns out that when it was going to occur happens to be homecoming. They thought better of that and moved it to the next month for us. That's kind of nice. Fall commencement coming up in December, and of course, homecoming. And if you can't guess it, the theme is there's no place like home. All right. I don't know who Dorothy's going to be or the Scarecrow or any of those, but we'll see what happens. Okay. With that, let me say thank you for indulging me for 10 extra minutes. But I want to say thank you to you, not just for being here and for your quietness as I was trying to talk to you, but more for what you do for our students and what you do for each other. You know, we know that our job here is to make sure that all of our students reach their educational, professional, and personal life goals, but it's always my intention that the university is also here to help everyone at this institution reach their educational, professional, and personal life goals, making sure you're successful. And that means making sure that your colleagues, your friends, the other people that work here around you are supported by you, by me, by everyone else as we try to help every student be successful. That's why we're here, but we have to help each other. We have to have each other's backs. We have to support each other. We have to make sure that we're giving as much to our friends as we are to our students and making this a place that we all want to work, play, and live. So thank you for your commitment to your colleagues. Thank you for your commitment, most of all, to these amazing students that we have the real honor and privilege to serve. Thanks very much, and I wish you the very, very best for the 18-19 academic year.